Hey everybody, it's PartyElite with another online battle today. This time around, I take the Dark Elves to battle against the Dwarfs of Arin. We begin, as always, with talk of composition and deployment, and as you can see, I've gone pretty heavy with cavalry in this battle. So, in charge we have Malekith. On foot, I don't want him up in the air as a viable target for enemy ranged fire, while he is supported by a Death Hag atop a Cauldron as well. Then the front line consists of 4 units of Harganeth Executioners. These guys are anti-infantry and armor-piercing, the obvious choice here. And right behind them, a unit of Witch Elves to provide some support, able to dive in and inflict the madness of Cain and rampaging wherever I need them to. Ideally, they'll push through the front lines as well and do that same thing to enemy ranged units. Then up front over here, 4 units of Dark Riders with shields are able to chase after enemy range units as well and use shields to protect themselves, while the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows provide me with some range capabilities of my own, though I'm not likely to outrange the Dwarfs, of course. On the other side of the field, as you can see, we do have a Rune Lord in charge right in the middle here, alongside a Thane, and a very clever initial formation. Up front over here, we have these Dragonback Slayers protecting this unit of Thunderers, able to fire away from the start. But the main formation over here is extremely smart. We've got a false front line of 2 units of Thunderers, extending the range that the Dwarfs start with. They'll be able to fire away as I'm closing the gap. Right behind them, we have the true front line consisting of these Dwarf Warriors on either flank and the Grumbling Guard in the center over here. Behind that front line, we've got the Longbeards with great weapons on either flank, and then a third layer on either flank, the Miners with blasting charges, and in the center, the Ekron's Miners. So, as I charge through, these Thunderers are able to fire away, and then the Dwarf Warriors or the Grumbling Guard are able to push forward as these Miners with blasting charges fire away with their blasting charges, disrupting my formation, reducing my charge effectiveness. So great thinking there, and then we do have the organ gun as well as the cannon able to fire away more or less right from the start. So let's take a look at how this all breaks down more or less right away. Like I said, the cannon and the organ guns firing away, and you can see just how much damage they do in just one volley. The Dark Riders here falling apart very quickly, willing to give up more or less, just short of giving up there, continue their chase against these Dragonback Slayers over here, trying to get some shots in and reduce that anti-large capability nice and early. You'll see a couple of shots go through, barely doing any damage. A second volley comes through, and these Dark Riders with repeater crossbows have completely given up on the fight already. I split them apart and pull these guys away so they don't take any further damage. I need them later on. Over here, meanwhile, you'll see I do split these Dark Riders with shields off to the side over here, trying to dodge the Dragonback Slayer, while off in the distance, the organ gun firing away at my Death Hag here, trying to reduce that very threatening unit nice and early. And again, now you'll see these Dark Riders split apart, sending 2 to the right and 2 to the left, trying to get a full surround on the Dwarfs, prevent that range fire, and shut down whatever I can while the rest of my army is closing the gap. Death Hag taking a lot of damage from the organ guns. As you can see, they're continuing to fire away, and I'm looking for an opportunity to shut all of this nonsense down. To the back over here, you'll see these Riders come through, touch these Miners with blasting charges a little bit as the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows continue to fire away at these Dragonback Slayers, and in comes some rear charges now back into these Thunderers over here, while up front over here, these Dark Riders with shields are completely demolished. They get the charge off, but the Grumbling Guard absorb the charge, do a fair bit of hurt, and then the blasting charges come through as well from the Ekron's Miners, and those Dark Riders basically give up right away. Back here, though, you'll see I am able to push into these Thunderers, as I was mentioning earlier, and these Dark Riders with shields are able to push in to the cannon, shutting down that range support, shutting down that artillery. Very helpful there, while all the way to the right over here, you'll see these Dark Riders with shields are hit by the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin, causing a fair bit of damage, and as they charge into the Thunderers over here, the Dwarf Warriors push in as well, hoping to cause a fair bit of damage for their own. The blasting charges come in too, and those Dark Riders are more or less giving up right away as well. Half health, half morale, while in the center here, these Dark Riders have pulled back basically immediately. Up front over here, these Dark Riders as well, engaging both these Thunderers as well as Ekron's Miners, just trying to prevent all that range support, while back here now, ping-ponging from the cannon up to the organ gun, again, trying to reduce all of that artillery fire as my initial cavalry engagement is largely falling apart. You can see a couple routes going on. The Death Hag finally able to close the gap into these Thunderers over here, pushing right through, trying to chase after the Rune Lord, hoping to take care of enemy leadership as quickly as possible, while all the way over here as well, you'll see I've had a couple of units falling apart. Blasting charges doing a great deal of work, reducing my units to ashes, more or less. Up front, though, in the center, you can see I have the Witch Elves able to push in after the Thunderers as well as Ekron Miners, just shutting them down, preventing them from opening fire as they are inflicted by the madness of Cain. Off to the left, meanwhile, you can see over here I'm about to pop a rather glorious Blade Wind, and take a look at just how much damage it does, carving through these guys, giving Malekith roughly 33 kills with just that one spell, and more importantly, filling up that murderous prowess bar. I want that to strike as soon as lines meet. Unfortunately, I'm a little mistimed here. Lines do meet. The Harganeth Executioners having a fairly good time against the Grumbling Guard. They're not going to have the best of times, but the Madness of Cain is providing some assistance over here, while in the center, the Dragonback Slayers are up against the Harganeth Executioners as well. They're not going to stand much of a chance. To the left, the Harganeth Executioners are under fire from the Miners with blasting charges, but in comes murderous prowess, and take a look at just how quickly the dwarfs are beginning to fall apart. To the back over here, you can see the Dark Riders taking care of the cannon and now going to turn their attention to the organ gun as well. And to the right now over here, these Hargoneth Executioners having a much better time with the assistance of Murderous Mastery, not even Murderous Prowess when it comes to Hargoneth Executioners, just finishing off that unit of the Grumbling Guard. To the left over here, these Longbeards are falling apart. We've had these Dwarf Warriors already give up on the fight, and the Thunderers as well being chased around by these Dark Riders with shields, not having a good time on the battlefield at all, getting very little done, while the Death Hag is in a bit of a tough spot here, taking a lot of that ranged fire, dropping very quickly in health and morale, having done very little work. The organ gun over here continues to fire away, trying to get a fair bit of damage into these Hargoneth Executioners. It's a good call. They are a very threatening unit. And over here as well, you can see these Dark Riders with shields again, just ping-ponging between Ekron's Miners, and as soon as they start to rout, sending them against the Thunderers, shutting down all of that range capability, whether it be in the form of blasting charges or bullets. To the center, though, you can see Malekith is having an absolute field day against these lowly miners with blasting charges, and the Rune Lord as well, fighting the Hargoneth Executioners, has been reduced to basically a fifth of his health. He's forced to fall back. He does not stand a chance. He is routing, and over here you can see I have these Dark Riders trying to push in to provide some support to the Hargoneth Executioners, but they do give up on the fight. But this glorious Blade Wind comes in and again moves in just the perfect direction as I needed to, dropping the Grumbling Guard's health to basically nothing. The Hargoneth Executioners are still having a tough time in that fight, but that is going to help them out. You can see these Hargoneth Executioners are turned around and sent into this engagement right away, trying to get a rear charge over here, while this organ gun continues to fire away at this unit of Hargoneth Executioners as well. Very low on health. These guys are very close to dying, while the Death Hag over here trying to close the gap into these Thunderers, hoping to shut down that range support, hoping to get rid of basically what's left of ranged fire from the Dwarfs. So very quickly closing that gap. They're very low on health. One more volley could take her down, and that volley comes in just at the last moment, finishing her off. So unfortunately, that Death Hag was largely useless in this battle, but you can see over here, we've got Malekith diving into the organ gun, trying to prevent that artillery fire, now finally able to shut it all down. That organ gun has done a lot of work with 109 kills to its name. Now over here we have the Rune Lord returning to the fight as well, but being very hesitant about where to get involved, while Malekith dives into this main engagement over here, trying to save those Hargoneth Executioners. In comes a rear charge from the other unit of Hargoneth Executioners as well, and the Dwarfs on the right over here are completely falling apart, while off in the distance these Witch Elves have done a tremendous amount of work, holding, whether it be the Miners or the Thane, whoever it might be, holding them all in place, inflicting the Madness of Cain wherever possible to prevent that range fire. And you can see over here these Dark Riders with shields as well, just chasing down units, hoping to shut them down once and for all, remove them from the field, while these Dark Riders with repeater crossbows getting involved in melee for themselves as well, again just trying to prevent that range fire. Just a lowly 20 kills on these Thunderers, and I think that's probably the unit of Thunderers with the most kills in this battle. So just trying to shut down all the range capabilities. You can see the organ gun giving up as well. The Rune Lord back here tries to get involved, but immediately inflicted by the Madness of Cain, everybody starts to give up. The Dwarfs shatter, surrender, and a Pyrrhic victory for my Dark Elves. Now, I was a little concerned about this battle at first. When my cavalry units disintegrated into thin air and my Death Hag took a ton of damage on the long march or ride to the front line, I was almost certain that this battle was a loss. But encircling the Dwarfs worked like a charm, and I was able to prevent fire for almost the entire battle and cause enough early damage that Murderous Prowess, or in the case of most of my army really, Murderous Mastery, was able to kick in early on during melee, giving me the upper hand. If you take a look at the numbers here, the Thunderers barely had any kills between them. The highest number of kills that anyone had was 20. And apart from that, the highest number of kills in the Dwarves in the entire army is 117 from those organ guns. Now, I could have done a better job shutting the organ gun down early on, but there were plenty of range targets for me to ping-pong back and forth between. Very clever initial deployment from my opponent. Very well played, I must say. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content. Online battles and total breakdowns will be making a serious comeback shortly. It's been a very busy month or so for myself, so the tactical analysis has had to slow down a little bit, but don't you worry, it's coming back. Thank you as always very much for watching, and I look forward to meeting you on the battlefield.